They give me a show with astounding emotional intelligence that reflects back to me my trauma, my queerness, my spirituality, and consequently becomes the best show I've ever watched in my entire life, and then they take it away from me. Hi, I'm Fairy Kim, and today I'm talking about She-Ra, um, a show that was earlier this year taken down off of Netflix and seemingly has thus vanished forever. Um, and I want to talk about all the characters and the themes in the show that made it mean so much to me. So, I'm going to talk about Adora, Catra, Scorpia, Entrapta, the four characters I relate to the most in the show. I'm also going to look into the intriguing villain characters that are made to be a lot more complicated than just villains, Hordak and Shadow Weaver, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the themes to show. Uh, the queer representation and, you know, perhaps political themes of the show, and the spiritual themes of the show, and the very important theme of trauma and numbness. So let's start with Adora, the She-Ra of the show. Um, wow, what a role model of a woman Adora is. She is she's a version of femininity that I could comfortably embody if I chose to be more feminine, I guess. Um, she yeah, I mean, she's obviously the hero character you're kind of supposed to relate to a little bit, but her relationship with Catra um, definitely reflects back to me my tendency to be attracted to women who are not healthy for me and to desperately want to reach them um, and definitely want to find love with them, even though they might be mean and cruel towards me. Um, and obviously her heroic arc of wanting to do the right thing appeals to me a lot. Like I said, she's role model material. Um, and her arc as She-Ra is a kind of there's a spirituality to it, which I'll get into under the spiritual themes. Um, but yeah, mostly it's she wanted to do good, and in fact she puts too much pressure on herself to do the right thing and save everyone, which is a major part of her character. But yeah, role model definitely. Another character I relate to a lot is Scorpio, again with regards to love for Catra, again with that tendency of mine to become attracted to women who are not healthy for me. A lot more of my self doubt in Scorpio and that tendency, I guess, to simp a little too hard for people who don't appreciate me. Um, and I recognise a lot of me in Scorpio. She's a lot more optimistic than I am. I mean, almost naively so. But she's definitely got that, big heart, affectionate, loyal qualities that I recognise in myself. And as I said, the self doubt um, aspect as well. Then there's Catra. Wow, what an amazing character Catra is. Um, reflects back to me many traits of women I am often attracted to that often, unfortunately, mistreat me. Um, that aggression, the mockery, um, always teasing and taunting and long fingernails I'm into, so there's that element to it. But yeah, just this kind of attitude and sass to her that I find very attractive in women, which is why I relate so much to Adora and Scorpia in terms of how they feel about Catra. But Catra also, there's this other side to her, which I think is what makes her such a fascinating character. She also reflects back to me my trauma. The way she responds from pain, um, with regards to Shadow Weaver's manipulation of her and her, tortured lesbian love of Adora, a lot of the pain and trauma Catra goes through in various key episodes in the show. I mean, I love Moment of Truth, the big moment where she completely loses it and opens the portals, and yeah, but there's lots of episodes really that highlight her trauma. Promise, Light Spinner, Moment of Truth, Remember, the wonderful redemption arc of her in Corridors. Character really reflected back to me my trauma. The trauma of having been so often manipulated and emotionally abused. The way that can bring out the ugliest side of you in response to it. And this trauma that I relate to a lot as a lesbian trans woman, actually. Feeling like you never measure up. In my experience, either to men or to other women. But I mean, you see that in her jealousy over Lonnie when they were kids. I saw a lot of my traumas reflected back to me in the character of Catra. At the same time as it demonstrated to me perfectly, as if they'd been reading my mind, exactly the sorts of traits in women and in toxic women that I'm attracted to. And that combination is part of what made this so life-changing for me, honestly. And then there's Entraptor. Wonderful, manic Entraptor. Always obsessed with science and data, and very clearly autistic coded. I relate to her in terms of that autistic coded. I'm not as manic as she is, but I relate a lot to that, social awkwardness with people, and the way. I mean, there's that wonderful moment in one of the episodes in season 5 where her friends are pissed off with her, and she has that wonderful moment where she talks about, I'm not good at people, but I am good at tech, and I thought by being good at tech you'd like me, but I messed that up as well. And it's just a wonderful piece of autism representation, really. The way we're often misunderstood and marginalised. So, yeah, another great character. Which leads wonderfully on to talking about Hordak, because one of the key things in Entraptor is her relationship with Hordak. Hordak is an interesting character because there is definitely this level of, I don't know what to call it, male vulnerability around pressure to be masculine. Being, I think, looked at there in the character of Hordak and how that thing represents. And Entraptor is the one that says to him, you don't have to be perfect, imperfections are beautiful. She sees him, she reaches him, and cuts through all that, pressure to be this thing that, this it was like, he's a defect, and that's what's bothering him, and he wants to prove himself worthy all the time. But she cuts through all that pressure to be something and says you're fine just the way you are. And some of the best moments in season 5 as well. It's not just the Catra and Adora moments in season 5 that hit so hard. It's the Entraptor Hordak moment. Honestly, seemed to reflect to me how the show made me feel. I'll come to the trauma and numbness themes in a bit, but it's like, what have you done to me? I don't know, it's just the way it's when someone can emotionally reach you when you're trying so hard to be cold and hard. And yeah, very compelling, interesting character Hordak in the end. When he starts off just a cartoonish villain in a way, he ends up being a very nuanced and sensitive, I guess, analysis of that male vulnerability issue, I think. And then there's Shadow Weaver, the toxic parent figure of Adora and Catra. And yeah, she's I mean, she doesn't really get redemption. What happens is that Catra and Adora get closure. It's not really a redemption that happens in the end. But Shadow Weaver is also interesting because although you never quite, it's not like Hordak. She doesn't get redeemed in your mind. You don't, you don't condone the awful things she's done or see them in a new light or whatever as such. But you do get a bit of understanding as to why she has been this way. When she did the spell of obtainment and became, the evil character she became, she had a pupil that she idolized, Micah. And I think the guilt over what happened with Micah, I think that affected the way she treats Adora and Catra. she sees Micah in Adora, this gifted, very gifted child, full of power, and she sees herself in Catra. This is textual. She says this in the show, effectively. You see it in the way she says to the baby Adora exactly what she said to Micah. We're going to do great things together, and you see it in the way she directly tells Catra, that she saw herself in Catra. So that's why she treats Catra so harsh, because she blames herself and she takes all of that out on Catra. So this is what's interesting, is it humanizes the villain, even though it doesn't excuse their actions. You understand a little bit why she was the way she was. And that scene at the end, I mean, parental figures and grief are definitely also themes in this show. And because you have Glimmer, Angela's mother, a very supportive parent, dying in a very self-sacrificial, kind of heroic way. And you've got Glimmer dealing with that grief. But also Shadowweaver's final moment where she sort of redeems herself, but she doesn't really, I don't think. It's more about closure for Catra and Adora. She finally tells Catra she's proud of her, and that is about closure. And as someone who has grieved a parental figure that seemed authoritarian and cold, but died when I was in my mid-20s, I know how important it is to find a way to kind of forgive and love them and find that closure, even though, So I appreciate that final Shadowweaver scene for that. And there's something about an authoritarian female figure, especially as a lesbian trans woman, there's something about that authoritarian, female authoritarian figure finally turning around and saying, I'm proud of you. This is the emotional depth of this show. Let's talk a little bit about the themes. Wow, this video has been going on a bit long now. Firstly, let's talk about queer representation, one of the most celebrated aspects of the show. Of course, you have key lesbian characters in Scorpia, in Adora, in Catra. You have a lesbian couple in Netossa and Spinnerella, and you have a non-binary character in Double Trouble. With all this queer representation, I think the Horde stuff, whether from Hordax Horde or then from Horde Prime's Horde, really does seem to be a comment on politics, anti-LGBT politics in our time. And that shift from Hordax the Horde to Horde Prime's the Horde really does seem to reflect the shift that happened in the kind of right-wing anti-LGBT voices online and in the world. Hordax Horde was very petty and spiteful and angry, very much like all that Gamergate kind of anti-SJW period online. And then you have the shift to Horde Prime, who is ruthless and efficient and erases people's personality and has a whole personality cult around him. It's a real fascism, and a lot of it also coated in religious, religious right-wing, religious fundamentalist language as well. You want to come to the Horde Prime's light and celebrating a kind of apocalypse. It's very fundamentalist coded, and there was that shift away from this kind of atheist, skeptical, kind of petty and petulant kind of right-wing voices online to actual fascism and return to right-wing religious fascism as well. It had the same moment of horror, really, when you saw the shift happen. So I really think that is a kind of a comment on that. Spiritual themes, which, as I said, Horde Prime, very right-wing, fundamentalist, Christian-coded in some ways. But it's not Christianity that's being critiqued there, it's a certain type of it, I think. And because then we have She-Ra and what's going on with She-Ra and Raz and Mara. This is very nature related spirituality. As a pagan, I found that very validating. I don't know, just I connected with it, but also in a figure like Mara, who sacrificed herself in order to save everyone, there's this element of like Jesus, the real Jesus, not the fundamentalist view of what that was, but the real one. And so it allows you space, I think, to reconcile with that. I found in watching the show. And then you have Raz, who's got this, in this quirky, eccentric kind of way, makes me think of, I mean, a bit of a Yoda character in that regard, I guess. It makes me think of Buddhists and Taoist kind of sages and stuff. So then you've got that level of Eastern mysticism in it. So there are many spiritual themes you can find in the show as well, which I've found particularly fulfilling as well. In fact, I even like to say that She-Ra represents Aphrodite, because the whole show is about the triumph of love over pain, a very Aphrodite theme. And then, Aphrodite does have that warlike aspect as well, if you go back to Astarte, where Aphrodite came from, like Ishtar or whatever, yeah. So, anyway, spiritual themes are quite interesting to try and read into this show as well. And, but finally, I guess I want to talk about the real theme of the show, emotional trauma and numbness, and the healing from that trauma, and how important friendship and community are to that. This becomes very apparent in season 5, which is why it's a shame that the only seasons you can get on DVD are 1 to 3, and if that continues to be the case, season 4 and 5 may be lost. Season 5 is phenomenal, and there's a big theme in there with Horde Prime chipping everyone, of that tendency to take pain and trauma and want to numb it, to become cold and emotionally numb. I suffered from this after emotional abuse. I became numb. I stopped feeling, I stopped wanting, I stopped desiring, and my passion gone. The show, in a way, actually helped heal me from that. And then it referenced the very thing it was doing, because that is such a clear metaphor for that. And that the way to break through and to heal, and clearly the message of the whole show, friendship, community. And that's what makes us on the left stronger than those on the right as well. Because we have community. We have a real sense of community. And this is a massive message of the show. The power of friendship, as Catra mockingly puts it, but that's it. And the way She-Ra owns her love of Catra, even with all of its pain and trauma, because that's who she is. And that was key to my healing as well. I love the people I love, even though they hurt me, and that's who I am. And I own that as part of who I am. I have to, because the only other option is to feel nothing at all. And the show taught me that. And that's why it means the world to me, and why it's such a shame that it's gone. Anyway, that was in memory of She-Ra. Next week, I will be talking about spirituality next week. So I think I'll just talk generally about my view of the universe and the conscious universe, and my basic pantheist and panpsychist view of things. But yeah, stay tuned for more videos. I love She-Ra. My favourite show ever, without a doubt. So sad, it will be missed.